His Excellency Pham San Chao, Ambassador of Vietnam to India, His Excellency Mr. Pranay Verma, Ambassador of India to Vietnam, Major General Wu Thien Trong, Director, Institute of Defense International Relations, Vietnam, esteemed panelists, diplomats, USI Council members, ladies and gentlemen. You would be happy to know that the USI is India's oldest tank, and it has an institutional tie-up with the Defense and International Relations since 2006. IDIR is the most prestigious defense think tank of Vietnam, and countries have been regularly visiting each other's institutions on alternate years to discuss matters of strategic significance for both countries. The focus of deliberation has essentially remained on the geopolitical trends in the Indo-Pacific, with particular reference to the Great Power strategic brinkmanship, security of South China or East China Sea, on the measures for enhancing India-Vietnam bilateral relations. The joint activities of the two institutions are fully supported by our embassies, and to that extent, these events take the form of typical Track 1.5 dialogue. I was privileged to be part of the USI delegation in 2017, and among other events at that time, I had an opportunity to interact with Major General Wu Thien Trong, Director IDIR, and again in 2019, the USI delegation was hosted by IDIR, and I was again a member of that delegation. And during the visit, we had very fruitful discussions and enjoyed the hospitality of our host, as also Ambassador Pranay Verma. In Delhi, we have close interaction with the Vietnamese embassy. We had organized interaction with the diplomats from ASEAN and other countries at the Vietnam embassy and USI respectively. The embassy of Vietnam had played a lead role in organizing these meetings. The IDIR has been regularly sending their scholars to USI International Annual Seminar and contributing articles for the USI publications. It is unfortunate that USI could not host a delegation from IDIR in the year 2020 due to pandemic situation. Nonetheless, the digital technology has permitted us to organize this event on a virtual platform. I'm grateful to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Vietnam, and our Ambassador to Hanoi to spare their valuable time and to deliver the keynote addresses today. That their insight desired focus in steering today's event. From the USI side, Vice Admiral Steve Soni and Major General R.P.S. Bhaduria will present the Indian perspectives on the topics allotted to them. We shall up the event on our website and share major takeaways with the policy makers in our country. I am sure the inputs from today's webinar will afford us better understanding of the dynamics of the Indo-Pacific region and help in policy formulation to further boost India-Vietnam bilateral relations. Without much ado, may I now request Major General Wu Thien Trong to make his introductory remarks. Over to you, General.
General Sharma, Director of USI of India, His Excellency Mr. Pranay Verma, India Ambassador to Vietnam, His Excellency Mr. Pham Sang Chau, Vietnam's Ambassador to India, distinguished delegates and colleagues, I echo most the points that General Sharma, Director of USI, has presented in his opening remark, and would like to add that if the COVID-19 pandemic did not happen, we would have a chance to meet in person and exchange with each other as a physical seminar, as we did for the past few years. And moreover, we would like to have a good time to interact with each other and visit our beautiful country. However, we believe that even when we have to wish to virtual mode holding a webinar like this, we will have a very fruitful exchange and discussion today. It is not only because the theme of chosen for our webinar, security and geopolitical dynamics in Indo-Pacific, allow us to sufficient room to share view on the most strategic, updated and practical issue for the India and Vietnam, but also for the fact that we have excellent diplomat, expert, researcher and analysts participating in today's event. Thank you, Ambassador Pranay Vera, Ambassador Phạm Sang Châu, Ambassador Tôn Sinh Thành, and Colonel Kumar, India Defense Attaché to Vietnam, for our being here today with us. I have to say that this is the first time that IDIR have conducted the virtual conference with foreign partner. When we asked for Defense Minister permission for choose USI for such cooperation activity, our minister quickly endorsed and strongly support our proposal. Together with the presence and participation of the ambassador today, this tells us a lot about the substance and our bilateral comprehensive strategic partnership. The great importance we attach to each other and traditional when established friendship between our two countries and general IDIR and USI in particular. In this spirit, I join General Sharma to co-open the webinar today, and we are looking forward to presentation, comment, question, and responses, especially enlightening and sincere and possible within framework of virtual conference. On the IDIR side, we will have two presentations on first, Vietnam's view on security in the East Sea, South China Sea, presented by Senior Colonel Khương Viết Thành, Deputy Director of IDIR. Second, Vietnam-India relationship presented by His Excellency Mr. Tôn Sinh Thành, former Vietnam's ambassador to India and current senior researcher at the Institute for the Foreign Policy and Strategic Study. As for languages, we have a presenter and a commentator who are expert in Chinese rather than English, so they need an interpreter sometime. I hope that you do not mind that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, His Excellency General, the Director of IDIR, General Wu Tian Trong, for those wonderful remarks. And may I now request His Excellency Mr. Pham San Chu, the Ambassador of Vietnam to India, to deliver his keynote address. Over to you, Excellency.
Namaste from New Delhi. Good morning to all of you. Major General B.K. Sharma, Director, United States Service Institution of India. Major General Wu Tian Chok, Director, Institute for Defense, International Relations of Vietnam. Your Excellency Ambassador Pranay Verma, Ambassador of India to Vietnam. Ambassador Tôn Sinh Thành, Rosa Casino, dear friends. I'm pleased to be present here today and participate in this webinar jointly organized by USI and IDIR. I thank you very much for the kind invitation to join you in the webinar on the topic of geopolitics and security dynamics in the Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is not a new concept, as it has been raised for many years ago in many countries like Japan, Australia, and the United States. Interestingly, India scholar Dr. Gurpreet Khurana was the first one to mention the concept of Indo-Pacific in 2007, when an analyst published an article proposing Indo-Pacific as a maritime area connecting Indian Ocean and the West Pacific Ocean, bordered by all Asian countries and those in Eastern Africa. Over the year, the concept of Indo-Pacific has been increasingly discussed in international political discourse, and it has become an important geopolitics connotation, signifying changes in global geopolitical and security environment. It has particularly drawn much attention of policymakers and policy analysis around the world in the past 4 years, since it was first officially adopted by then US President Donald Trump. We, however, have also seen competing and sometimes different interpretation of the concept, which shows that the concept is evolving and taking shape. Given such concept, I would like to share with you some of my remarks, and I believe that the discussion today will shed more light and bring more insight to the topic we are discussing. We all may remember that the United States is not the initiator of the Indo-Pacific Vision. Some said that this is the idea which comes from Japan. However, the United States was the one that has been taking the lead in formulating and implementing a strategy on that matter. During his visit to Asia in November 2017, the then US President Donald Trump unveiled his vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific as US approaches to Asia. This vision was developed into a strategy in the following year, 2018. And in November 2019, the US Department of State released a progress report on the implementation of the US Whole of Government strategy on the Indo-Pacific region, detailing 2 years of diplomatic, economic, governance, and security initiative that shows the United States' commitment to this region of Asia-Pacific. With President Biden coming to power in 2021, the question is still remain on whether his administration would overthrow what the previous administration has built on, the concept of Indo-Pacific. However, at least more recently, the current administration has taken the initiative in convening the virtual meeting among the Quad foreign ministers, a step seen as a boost to one of the key pillars to effectuate the strategy to connect the two oceans. Washington also went a step forward to propose a summit among Quad leaders. India is the most important supporter of Indo-Pacific Initiative, although some claim that India is the weakest chain among the Quad of four. During the East Asia Summit held in Bangkok in November 2019, India Prime Minister officially launched the Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, IPOI. The IPOI targets to ensure the safety, security, and stability of maritime space. To that end, it also worked out 7 pillars, namely maritime security, maritime ecology, maritime resources, capacity building and resources sharing, disaster risk reduction and management, science, technology, and academic cooperation, and trade connectivity, and finally, maritime transport. Interestingly, in addition to Japan, which is also an important player in the region, other European countries have also expressed their interest, either coming individually or collectively on Indo-Pacific. Though still lack of a separate Indo-Pacific vision, Australia also put great attention on this region. The country has released its new national defense strategy in July 2020, saying that it would shift the national defense focus to the enhancement of military strength throughout the Indo-Pacific region. For ASEAN, in June 2019, ASEAN adopted its official unified vision on the Indo-Pacific, namely ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Following more than a year of hard negotiation, as said in the document, ASEAN perceived the Asia-Pacific and Indian Ocean region as amongst the most dynamic in the world and center of economic growth for decades as well. These two regions continue to experience geopolitical and geostrategic shifts, presenting various both opportunities and challenges. The ASEAN Outlook has identified 4 key elements of the Indo-Pacific, namely a perspective of viewing Asia-Pacific and Indian Ocean region not as a contiguous territory space, but as a closely integrated and interconnected region, with ASEAN playing a central and strategic role. Number 2, an Indo-Pacific region of dialogue and cooperation instead of competition or rivalry. Number 3, Indo-Pacific region is a region of development and prosperity for all of us. Number 4, the importance of maritime domain and perspective in the evolving of the regional security architecture. The outlook of ASEAN also emphasized the centrality of ASEAN. That means to maintain ASEAN's central role in any evolving regional security structure and in Southeast Asia and also in surrounding region. And it also stressed the importance of respect for international law and a rules-based order based on international law, openness, transparency, inclusivity, and commitment to advancing economic engagement in the region. Vietnam, as a signatory to that document, has always reiterated its support of an Indo-Pacific region of peace, development, and prosperity on the basis of close cooperation, integration, and interconnection. Our country welcomes any regional connection and linkages initiatives that contributes to peace, stability, cooperation, progress in the region. Anchored, of course, in the rule-based order and respect for international law, legitimate rights, and interests of all nations. With that in mind, in order to elaborate on how Indo-Pacific region would evolve and take shape in the near future, we should be aware of the factors that affect geopolitical and security dynamic in the region. I would like to take this opportunity to raise some of the preliminary thought on that issue before I conclude my speech. Number one, major powers and relationship between and among them always play a crucial role in any regional structure and order. Indo-Pacific, meanwhile, is such a region that accommodates almost all the biggest countries in the world, including the US, India, China, Japan, and Australia. Over the past years, we have seen many trends, like the rise of China, the uncertainty of the previous US administrations with its lack of commitment towards the region, the growing economic and strategic cloud of India, the rising strategic competition in various fields economically, scientifically, commercially, and even geopolitically between USA and China. All these factors have generated in the shift of the globe center of gravity to the Indo-Pacific region and let impact on the security and stability of the region as well. And therefore, those matters should be thoroughly elaborated. Secondly, relationship between major powers and other medium and small-sized countries like Vietnam would very much matter. Japan, Australia, India, and US are strengthening bilateral relations with ASEAN partners and those in South Asia. China is also expanding its political and economic influences. This network of interaction creates different layers of the regional structure and intertwining interests among nations. A peaceful and friendly relationship between Vietnam and India that is to be discussed latterly would certainly contribute to maintaining peace, stability, cooperation, and prosperity in the region, given the increasing role of India as a global player and the important role of Vietnam as an economic emergent. Thirdly, Indo-Pacific strategies or vision worked out by the United States, India, Japan, Australia, or ASEAN themselves all push and underline the importance of the central role of ASEAN in the region. Thus, the way the organization, namely ASEAN, deal with and overcome its inner challenges, like the latest development now in Myanmar, would have great implications on the evolving regional architecture. Last but not least, I want to mention the two latest developments, one in South China Sea and the other in the border between India and China. The ongoing and emerging security issues, particularly maritime dispute, competition for sovereignty and freedom and safety in South China Sea, East China Sea, and Indian Ocean has remained challenges for all the countries in the region. You have seen over the past 1 year unprecedented circulations of note verbals concerning the freedom of navigation in South China Sea, and also mentioning the claim by China in South China Sea. Never we have seen such development in our current history. It shows the growing interest of all the countries in the region and outside region with regard to the development of great concern in South China Sea. Secondly, we also see the latest development of the past 40 years about the tension at the border of India and China. The two out of the four most important players in the region. Luckily, the latest disengagement, which is taking place over the past few days, have relieved the concern of many countries in the regions. But I believe that also constitutes one of the long-lasting implications in the geopolitics and dynamic of this region. We are all following closely this development, and we keep finger across and hope for the better of the relationship between our two very good friends. Last but not least, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Director, I just want to stress that the current dynamic of the regions is heavily impacted by one element that we used to ignore or we used to underestimate, which is the non-traditional security challenge. With that, I refer to the COVID-19, which is the most acute challenge in terms of non-traditional for all of us. The fact that how we deal with the COVID-19 has shown our ability to meet all the challenges and our capacity to resist to all the challenges that sometimes falling upon us unexpectedly. With that development, I want to bring up to your discussion. I believe that we are lucky to be part of this region, a region of prosperity and of rapid development, but also a region of diverse economically and politically challenges for us. But we hope that we will be able to overcome all this. With that, I would like to conclude my remarks here and look forward to the deliberation at the following session. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Excellency, for capturing the very essence of the geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific and the role that India and Vietnam are expected to play. It is always really enlightening to listen to you. May I now request our ambassador in Hanoi, Mr. Pranay Verma, to give his introductory and keynote address. Over to you, Ambassador.
Well, good afternoon. I think just went through some perils of having a virtual conference, but I'm glad that we are meeting today on the virtual platform. And for that, I would like to thank Director of United Services Institution, General B.K. Sharma, Director of Institute of Defense International Relations, General Wu Thien Chong, Vietnam's Ambassador to India, His Excellency Pham San Chao, a former Ambassador of Vietnam to India, His Excellency Thun Sin Thang, distinguished senior colleagues and participants at today's webinar, ladies and gentlemen. I thank both USI and IDIR for inviting me at today's event. As think tanks dedicated to studying national security issues, and in particular, their implications for national defense, both USI and IDIR are eminently placed to deliberate and contribute to our collective understanding of the geopolitics and security dynamics in the Indo-Pacific. I've had the privilege of interacting with IDIR and engaging with their scholars on a number of occasions over the last 1.5 years of my stay here as the Indian ambassador. I believe IDIR is not only repositories of great strategic understanding of the region, they also share interest, empathy, and sensitivity on many issues of India's interest and concerns. I'm happy that USII and IDIR have maintained regular engagement under their bilateral arrangement, even during disruptions caused by pandemic using online platforms such as today's. Today's topic, geopolitics and security dynamics in the Indo-Pacific region, is a very relevant one to speak the obvious to both India and Vietnam, not only because we are situated in this region, but also because we depend so extensively on the region's peace and security to advance our priorities of national well-being and development. An important preface to our conversation on the geopolitics and security dynamics in the region, in my view, is to also understand how we look at the construct of the Indo-Pacific itself and what it entails. As a geographical region, Indo-Pacific is relatively easy to conceptualize with minor variations as a region straddling the Indian and the Pacific Oceans. At the same time, we also need to have a clear understanding of not just the contestations and fault lines that exist in the region, but also of the choices for collaboration and coexistence that are important for the region. And therein lies our appreciation of the geopolitics of the region and our perception of the attendant opportunities and challenges. In my remarks, I'll be happy to touch upon how we in India view these multiple strands as part of India's Indo-Pacific vision. First, our Indo-Pacific vision that was articulated first by Prime Minister Modi in his speech at Shangri-La Dialogue in June 2018 is India's Indo-Pacific vision. It is sui generis, though there could be areas of convergences and similarities with others. There are many constructs that have been and are being proposed for the Indo-Pacific, and therefore it is important to make this point. Second, our Indo-Pacific vision is premised on two basic recognitions. First, that opportunities and challenges in the Indian and the Pacific Oceans cannot be artificially separated. And the second, that this geographical space represents the new growth realities of this century, not of the last. It is therefore in Vietnam's interest, as much as it is in India's interest, that we reflect this inescapable reality of the Indo-Pacific as an intrinsic part of our national strategy, both in thinking and discourse, as well as in terminological description. Geographically, for India, the Indo-Pacific is a vast maritime space stretching from the western coast of North America to the eastern shores of Africa. Over 50% of global trade traverses this maritime domain. It is also home to over 60% of the world's population and the global GDP. And so the security and stability of this region is vital for the world. As the largest economy in the Indian Ocean, and as a country significantly integrated with the Pacific through trade, India has a natural interest in the peace, stability, and development of the Indo-Pacific region. India's Indo-Pacific vision is also a critical component of our doctrine of Sagar, that is, security and growth for all in the region, as well as a natural extrapolation of our Act East policy. Our vision is for a free, open, peaceful, prosperous, and above all, an inclusive region that believes in a rules-based regional architecture and respects sovereignty of nations. And for this audience, I would like to reiterate that ASEAN's centrality is a foundational feature of this vision. Unlike the original connotation of the Asia-Pacific as a theater of conflict of war times, our Indo-Pacific vision is a positive construct of development and connectivity in which India can play a unique role by virtue of its geographical location and economic strength. In some sense, this vision has an economic primacy with emphasis on collective prosperity through collaboration and connectivity. Of course, in this economic emphasis, collective efforts to ensure rules-based order and security are equally vital. Given the predominantly maritime nature of the region, it is obvious that much of these relate to our efforts to ensure that the global commons are better secured, that freedom of navigation and overflight and of lawful commerce and economic activities is protected based on international law, and that sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries are respected. It is also about ensuring that any code of conduct for the region is in accord with international maritime law and practices and serves the legitimate rights and interests of all. We also see Indo-Pacific as a platform to promote regional multipolarity, one that gives all stakeholders a voice and say in the shaping of the regional order that is fair and just and abides by universally recognized norms. In other words, the Indo-Pacific construct allows us options to proactively advance our interests through a network of positive interdependencies rather than reactively confining us to binaries. The COVID-19 pandemic and the impacts of climate change have added to the pre-existing geopolitical and geo-economic complexities in the region and the world. In many ways, the matrix of security itself has undergone transformation, with issues like climate adaptation, healthcare, supply chain resilience, cross-border mobility, all acquiring greater salience in our security and threat perceptions. Navigating those uncertainties will be a common challenge for all. To translate this vision of partnership and collaboration into practical action, at the East Asia Summit of 2019, and Ambassador Pham San Chao alluded to this, Prime Minister Modi further articulated our Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, IPOI, which provides a detailed template for partnership-based cooperation across 7 verticals that were mentioned by Ambassador Pham San Chao. And one can see across these 7 verticals, the IPOI concerns itself with fashioning practical regional responses to deal with both traditional and non-traditional security issues on the one hand, and shared challenges like climate change and sustainable development on the other, all while building interconnected stakes in collective well-being and ensuring the foundational centrality of ASEAN in the regional architecture. Indeed, the IPOI does not seek to create any new regional architecture, but builds upon the existing ASEAN-led framework. We are happy that ASEAN countries, including Vietnam, have come up with their own outlook on the Indo-Pacific, AOIP, which is broadly similar to our Indo-Pacific Vision and Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. The 4 priority areas of ASEAN's AOIP, which are maritime partnerships, sustainable development goals, connectivity, and economic partnership, overlap very nicely with India's Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. This congruity in how we view our shared region is not a mere coincidence, but reflects the logical awareness of what we need to do for the region's security and growth. Together, ASEAN's AOIP and India's IPOI provide a useful roadmap to reinforce our cooperation with ASEAN and promote regional integration, physical and digital connectivity, and economic and development partnerships. Let me say a few words on where Vietnam fits in this vision. We believe that India-Vietnam Comprehensive Strategic Partnership is a critical piece in the Indo-Pacific landscape. As the joint vision adopted by our 2 prime ministers during the virtual summit in December 2020 noted, enhanced defense and security partnership between India and Vietnam is an important factor of stability in the Indo-Pacific region amidst the emerging geopolitical and geoeconomic landscape in the region and beyond. Indeed, as a close partner of India with multifaceted political, economic, and security cooperation, and as a key link in India's engagement with ASEAN, Vietnam is clearly an indispensable partner in our Indo-Pacific vision, given our shared values and interests. Both India and Vietnam are maritime nations, connected historically by maritime routes. Our shared stakes in peace and stability of our common maritime region, and our growing emphasis on maritime interests in our respective national development strategies make our IPOI and ASEAN's AOIP a practical basis to promote India-Vietnam strategic partnership in the face of contemporary challenges and opportunities in our shared region. Before concluding, let me add that as the existing geopolitical and geoeconomic scenario in the Indo-Pacific region has been overlaid by the new impacts created by COVID-19, concerns over future pandemics, supply chain overdependencies, mobility disruptions have all brought to the fore new challenges of an interconnected world. They have also focused our attention to building capacities at home. In India's case, the Atmanirbhar Bharat, or the vision of self-reliant India, is a profound response to these challenges. It is not about isolating India. Quite contrary to that, it is about making India self-regenerating and resilient so that India can integrate more effectively with the world and where India's capacities become an engine for global growth and revival and serve the needs of entire humanity. Recent developments have shown that whether it is for vaccines or supportive medicines or masks and PPEs, India's homegrown capabilities are helping the Indo-Pacific region and the larger international community to fight COVID-19. We are confident that India's economic capacities, developmental aspirations, and capabilities as a first responder will create opportunities and be a pillar of strength for the economic revival and for peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific and indeed the world post-COVID-19. We look forward to working ever more closely with Vietnam in this journey of hope into the future. I thank you for your attention and wish you a productive and rewarding discussion at this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Verma, for those very insightful, positive, and forward-looking remarks. And with that, now I think I hand over to Dr. Roshan to take us further.
Thank you, General Sharma. We start with our session 1. But before we start, I'd like to give a brief introduction about our panelists. We have Major General RPS Bhaduria, VSM retired, who's currently the head of Center for Strategic Studies and Simulation at USI. He regularly conducts strategic gaming exercises for NDC, Army War College, and IFS institutions. He is also having experience in anti-terrorist operations, both at policy formulation and execution level. He writes on security environment in Indo-Pacific region. The other panelist we have today is Senior Colonel Conwit Thun. He's the Deputy Director of Institute for Defense International Relations. His prior appointment includes Fellow Advisor of Institute of China Studies, Senior Researcher of China Affairs in Military Science Academy. May I now request Major General Sharma, Director USI, to chair the first session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roshan. In regard to my introduction to the first theme, I think much of what I would like to have said has already been very well articulated by the two ambassadors. Suffice is for me to say that Indo-Pacific is the center of gravity, and there is so much of geopolitical churning which is taking place, while on one hand the region is presenting us a host of geopolitical and strategic security challenges, but on the other hand there are plethora of opportunities which need to be capitalized. So to just enlighten us about what these geopolitical trends in the Indo-Pacific region are, I'll request General Bhaduria to give us the trend lines. And then, of course, one of the most sensitive flashpoint in the region taking certain preemptive measures, preemptive and predatory measures, and it is showing its belligerence So, what is the scenario there in East China Sea and EC? I'll request Colonel Hong Viet Thanh, the Deputy Director of IDIR, who is an authority on the subject, to share his views. Over to you, General Batulia.
Thank you so much, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Both the excellencies have covered the Indian perspective on the Indo-Pacific and the perspective of the Vietnam. So the challenge before me is to cut down from the script which they have already covered. Now, if I do that, I'll be left with nothing much to speak about. However, in the end, I would like to analyze a question which both the ambassador did not cover, and that is, can China be a responsible global power and a trustworthy partner? Now, to start with, I agree with Ambassador Verma that the Indo-Pacific definition, as is being given now, gives out the correct geostrategic construct of this particular region, and it is more contemporary in nature. Okay. Now, just to give out a few drivers, most of them have already been covered by the speakers. I'll just highlight a few of them. Firstly, is the majority of the world trade passes through this particular region, and it includes 7 of the world's largest economies, members of G20, and that is China, Japan, India, South Korea, Australia, Indonesia, and United States. Today, we see that the US power is in relative decline, and the middle powers are coming together on issues of common interest, which was covered by the ambassadors also. Also, we need to remember that the global rules which were set by US provided us in the region an opportunity to have stability and also to grow. So that is something very important that we need to keep in mind. Now, China's desire is to change the status quo and refashion the norms. The US-China, they have a strategic competition, and this is likely to remain on the upward trajectory during the present administration in US. And one of the indicators of that was the Quad meeting that was called immediately, very soon in the beginning of the administration, that is on 18th of February. Now, China is the largest economy in the region and the largest investment and trading partner. So, the economic partnership with China is an attractive proposition for most of the countries in the region, and that includes practically all of ASEAN countries. The growing military capabilities and reach of China, they constrain the strategic space and increase the threat perception of the neighbors. And we are all very aware how China is impacting our security. And of late, even during pandemic, we have witnessed increasing assertiveness from China. Now, Indo-Pacific in its geographical dimension was covered by Ambassador. All that I wish to highlight is that ASEAN connects the two oceans, not only in geographical sense, but also in civilizational sense. And that is something very important for us to remember. India, of course, is seeing this as a theater of opportunity, and envisages a greater role for itself. The Forum for Indo-Pacific Islands Cooperation, which we started a few years back, highlights this thinking. Now, coming to Indo-Pacific, India's vision on that, the ambassador covered it beautifully, and Prime Minister Modi, for the first time, had articulated this particular vision very clearly in his keynote address. So I will not repeat that. Sagar has been very well covered, and the importance of IPOI and the AOIP of ASEAN, how they can converge, has also been covered. I'll just highlight 2 of the initiatives which India has initiated, and those are the International Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. I think in both of these, ASEAN can join in and see the development taking place. Centrality of ASEAN is emphasized by everyone, India, US, and all other countries in the region. Right? India has taken some steps as far as the security is concerned, the maritime security in the IOR, which is important to us. One is setting up of the information fusion center, and which would provide, collect data, analyze it, and provide it to the countries in the IOR, because they do face a huge threat from the climate change, some of them existential in nature. That is, the rising sea levels are going to impact them hugely. Now, I also wish to highlight the role India is playing, the responsible role India is playing, particularly in the Indian Ocean region, in terms of the support it provided during COVID-19. India provided medicines, medical equipment, medical teams to all the countries, most of the countries in the region. And also since October 2020, we are providing shiploads of food items to Djibouti, Eritrea, and Sudan. Now, this we need to remember that even when India was facing a huge challenge from this pandemic herself, we were reaching out to the other countries, being responsible neighbor and being responsible power in this region. And this speaks well for our philosophy, the ancient philosophy of Vasudev Kutumbakam, which is that the world is a family. Right. Now, coming to the real question which I wanted to throw, can China be a responsible global power and trustworthy partner? Now, why do I say this? Because leaders in Beijing are active more assertively in Asia. And I do not have to repeat what's happening in Taiwan, Hong Kong, in Japan, in South China Sea, and on our borders in Ladakh. Then, economically, China is actually becoming more mercantilist in its approach, and the countries who are dealing with China, they are falling into a debt trap, even though both the sides may deny it for the time being, but it's a fact that countries are falling into debt trap. And the good example are the countries which are in our neighbor in South Asia, right? Then they are becoming more authoritarian in their domestic policies. We saw what happened in Hong Kong. We are also seeing the reports which are coming from Xinjiang are very, very disturbing, right? No country can treat their minorities the way China is doing. So this must disturb all the countries which are in its neighborhood, because we do share a lot of relations with the population across. So that's something of a worry to us. Now, what is China thinking of, right? China is wanting a new type of great power relations concept with US. Now, what does this do? It means that China wishes that US must recognize it as a primacy or the real pole in Asia. And then so that it can deal with the other competitors like Japan and India easily. Then also, China's ability to project power is estimated to go rapidly between now and 2035. China plans to build a blue water navy that will include almost 4 or 5 aircraft carriers, the world's largest submarine fleet, missile capability, the ability to operate inside the first island chain, and effectively counter the regional competitors, Japan and India. So what is China seeking? Actually, it is seeking a bipolar world along with US and a unipolar Asia, whereas India seeks a multipolar Asia and multipolar world, which our ambassador covered a few minutes back. And India, with its legitimate aspiration, wishes to emerge as a pole in this particular region. So therefore, there are this thing for areas of conflict. It can't be avoided with China. And this was said in so many words by one of these analysts in New York Times, and the Chinese analysts are quite forthright when it comes to views on on India. And what he actually said was something which is very true. And he said was, China actually has many ways to hurt India. China could send an aircraft carrier to Gwadar port in Pakistan. China had turned down the Pakistan offer to have military stationed in the country. If India forces China to do that, of course, we can put a navy at your doorsteps. So therefore, our apprehensions that China is encroaching in the South Asian space of India is something which is very real. Look at what is happening in Nepal. Right, they are meddling in the internal politics of the country. Their ambassador was trying to bring about some peace between the warring factions of the ruling party. What's happening in Myanmar? Right, there are reports to say that although Myanmar has stopped the flights with all other countries, there are regular flights in night between Myanmar and China. Right, Pakistan, I have just spoken. In one of our neighbors, there was a port development project which India and Japan they were to undertake, and that was the government stopped that. So these are some very worrisome signs. Therefore, I need to throw a question, and it may be very controversial today, but we need to reflect upon this, and that is, sorry, before that, South China Sea. Now, what happened on 1st of February? Right, they brought in a new law whereby their Coast Guard now can fire upon any ship which passes through that region because China claims the whole of South China Sea. So therefore, they have given the powers to their Coast Guard to fire upon any of the ship that is passing through. What happens to the FONOPs, which US regularly conducts, and India also participates in them? What happens to our ships which are passing through carrying a lot of trade and other items? So therefore, the countries in the region are naturally worried. And this is what this is the statement which was given out by the MEA after that 18th of February Quad meeting. And for the first time, if you notice, we use the words like territorial integrity and sovereignty. We also said transparency. We want transparency in the region. Why transparency? Because we all know what happened during COVID, right? How things were kept under wraps, and the whole world is paying for it and may continue to do so for a couple of years more, right? Territorial integrity. Look at what is happening in South China Sea, that new law. What happened on our borders in Ladakh. Right. Naturally, the countries are worried. The foreign minister of Japan showed a serious concern on this new law which China has brought in South China Sea. Even the US secretary, he also mentioned about the centrality of ASEAN and said that this is going to take place in more areas. Terrorism, for example. Right. And USI was privileged to conduct first Quad anti-terrorist tabletop exercise in 2019. So these countries are getting together not just because of China, but also for other in the realm of other security dimensions. That is maybe pandemic, the terrorism, and things like that. Right. So therefore, now my question is that does Quad have a future, and Quad Plus, should it become a reality? Seeing the background that I've just given out, right? And is ASEAN NATO in the making? Is Quad a ASEAN NATO in the making? It may sound something very radical today, but reflect upon it. We might be moving in this direction in times to come. So to conclude, all that I will say is that Indo-Pacific construct has provided an opportunity for India to maximize its strategic interest while responding to changes in the regional security environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan Baduria, for that presentation. See, one thing I just want to flag 2 or 3 issues here. The elephant in the room in the Indo-Pacific is China. Whereas no other countries, you don't want to contain China in the classic sense. I think in today's geopolitics, this zero-sum game will lead nobody anywhere. But the way China has been behaving, and it's in an arbitrary manner, and sort of it is violating international laws. It is even that tribunal judgment is thrown to the winds. It is getting emboldened day by day. Therefore, this entire strategy of hedging, balancing, and binding may not work. To that extent, I feel that Quad must assume a more responsible role. We should not only be in the security domain, but also look at the economic dimension, the technological dimension. Unless there is some kind of a viable alternative to Belt and Road Initiative, countries of the region will not have floor for the new idea of Quad. Likewise, I think the centrality of ASEAN has to be preserved and promoted in letter and spirit because they are the biggest stakeholders in the Indo-Pacific region. Therefore, I think we need to work on to strengthen ASEAN so that they speak in one voice as far as their collective interests are concerned. Well, rest of these issues we can probably discuss in the question answer session. But may I now request the next speaker to give us a perspective what is happening in East Sea or South China Sea. Over to you, Senior Colonel.
Vâng. Kính thưa Đại sứ Phạm Thanh Châu, kính thưa Đại sứ Verma, His Excellency Ambassador Phạm Thanh Châu, His Excellency Ambassador Verma, kính thưa Thiếu tướng Vũ Tiến Trọng, Thiếu tướng Sharma, thưa quý vị, General Trọng and General Sharma, co-chair, ladies and gentlemen. Vâng, cảm ơn đã cho phép chúng tôi được trình bày quan điểm của mình về cái tình hình Biển Đông năm 2020, dự báo và các quan điểm của Việt Nam. I thank you for this opportunity to share with you at this webinar on our assessment on the situations in the East Seas, also known as the South China Seas, and some of our assessment for the time to come in this area in the year 2021. Trước hết, về đánh giá tình hình Biển Đông năm 2020, chúng tôi cho rằng Biển Đông năm 2020 tiếp tục diễn biến phức tạp, tiềm ẩn nhiều nguy cơ do cạnh tranh Mỹ-Trung và sự thiếu hợp tác của các bên liên quan. As for 2020, we have the assessment that situation in South China Sea, or the East Sea as we often call, continue the complexity and also it harbor many unpredictabilities just because we are seeing the increased China and US competition, strategic competitions, and also we see the lack of the cooperations from other stakeholders in dealing with the issue. Với Trung Quốc, nước này tiếp tục triển khai các bước leo thang kiểm soát Biển Đông mới, tiến hành một cách có bài bản, có lộ trình trên cả thực địa và trong thực thi chính sách ngoại giao, pháp lý, tuyên truyền. As for China, we have been seeing China in 2020 escalating its strategy in controlling the East Sea or South China Sea. It is continue using the three words tactics, including the legal diplomacy, and also increasing its action on the field. Trên thực địa, Trung Quốc gia tăng kiểm soát thực tế Biển Đông thông qua triển khai tăng cường sự hiện diện về quân sự, tiến hành diễn tập với mật độ dày đặc, kể cả trong các khu vực mà Việt Nam có tuyên bố chủ quyền. It is important to note that at the sea, China in 2020 increased action to help increase the actual control of the sea, including the intensity of the military presence and also the military exercises. Even some exercises were held in the
sea waters that belong to the sovereignty of Vietnam as recognized by international laws.
Trung Quốc cũng điều chỉnh một số luật trong nước để hợp pháp hóa các hành vi trên biển của mình, như định nghĩa lại vùng biển giữa đảo Hải Nam và đảo Hoàng Sa của Việt Nam, sửa đổi luật hải cảnh cho phép sử dụng vũ khí đối với tàu nước ngoài.
Some of the adjustment and adaptation of laws, domestic laws in particular by China, were of our attention and concern. Those including the adjustment in the defining of the water between the Hainan Island and the mainland, and also, as the previous speaker mentioned, the issuance of the new China's Coast Guard law allowing its Coast Guard to open fire on the vessels and other entities when it deemed violations of the so-called China sovereignty.
Đáng chú ý, trên phương diện ngoại giao, Trung Quốc lại thể hiện động thái ngược lại với những giọng điệu ôn hòa hơn, tập trung cáo buộc Mỹ là nhân tố chính gây bất ổn, đe dọa hòa bình trên Biển Đông.
China employed a rather different diplomatic strategy, not as audio as before, but this time we are seeing a China focusing its effort on accusing the USA as the main element that caused the instability, and also the insecurity in the water of the South China Sea.
Tuy nhiên, Trung Quốc cũng không ngại phản bác công hàm chỉ trích của các nước tại Liên Hợp Quốc.
But when it comes to the non-verbal battle, we are seeing a real China of tit for tat.
Trung Quốc cũng đang tìm kiếm các giải pháp lý mới ngoài UNCLOS 1982 để làm vũ khí phục vụ cuộc chiến pháp lý trong tương lai.
We are seeing China trying to seek other means to not only undermine the UNCLOS 1982, but finding other ways of interpreting this, and also other means of legal documents so that it can be better prepared for the legal struggle in the future when it comes to South China Sea.
Còn với Mỹ, đồng minh và các nước ngoài khu vực, thì Mỹ vẫn coi vấn đề Biển Đông trở thành một mặt trận trực diện chống Trung Quốc, khẳng định và duy trì cam kết với khu vực, thể hiện quyết tâm can dự vào vấn đề Biển Đông thông qua các tuyên bố phản đối mạnh mẽ những hành động của Trung Quốc.
As for the US and its allies, we are observing that the US in the year 2020 have already elevated the issue of South China Sea to become a front confronting China not only in the real water but also in the diplomatic. This is clearly seen in the very strong statement by the Department of State opposing China as far as for China's claims in the South China Sea. And the US and its ally are also voicing the support for the legitimate claims and also the legitimate rights of the stakeholders in this issue.
Mỹ tăng cường sự hiện diện quân sự tại khu vực, đồng thời lôi kéo các nước đồng minh.
The US military presence in the South China Sea during the last year was also on the rise, and also US is trying to invite other partners and allies to come to join the military presence.
Trong thời gian qua, nhiều quốc gia như Anh, Pháp, Nhật Bản đã cam kết sẽ gia tăng can dự vào Biển Đông, như cử tàu sân bay, hải quân tham gia tuần tra tại Biển Đông.
There was also an increase in the commitments and also the engagement of countries outside the region. Among other, we can name the UK, France, and especially for Japan to have the stronger commitment and also pledges to send flotilla of ships, including the aircraft carriers, like in the case of the UK, to South China Sea.
Anh Pháp Đức cũng trực tiếp gửi công hàm phản đối các tuyên bố chủ quyền của Trung Quốc.
It is interesting to see the UK, France, and Germany to submit jointly a note verbal to the UN, objecting China with regard to its illegitimate claim in the South China Sea.
Còn đối với Ấn Độ, trong năm qua, Ấn Độ cũng thể hiện quan điểm ủng hộ quyền tự do hàng hải, tự do hàng không và hoạt động thương mại hợp pháp không bị cản trở trong những vùng biển quốc tế.
As for India, we see that India is consistent in its view, and in the year 2020, India was strongly voicing its opinion with regard to the support of the freedom of navigation and also the overflight freedom and the freedom to operate and also to conduct economic and trade activities as the international laws allowed.
Ấn Độ cũng thể hiện sự sẵn sàng hiện diện quân sự thông qua việc triển khai một tàu chiến tới Biển Đông vào tháng 8 năm 2020.
And of course, we have to mention that India sent a military ship to South China Sea in August 2020. It shows India's readiness to help stabilize the situation.
Với ASEAN, vai trò trung tâm của ASEAN tiếp tục đối diện với nhiều thách thức tới từ những hành động quyết đoán ngày càng gia tăng của Trung Quốc trên biển và sự đổ vỡ của quan hệ Trung Mỹ.
For ASEAN, it is not too difficult to see that the centrality of ASEAN is under pressures, and ASEAN is facing a lot of challenges, not only from China aggressive actions, but also from the deteriorations of the US-China strategic relationship.
Trong khi đó, tiến trình đàm phán COC tiếp tục bị đình trệ do diễn biến phức tạp của dịch bệnh COVID-19 tại các nước Đông Nam Á và Trung Quốc.
Due to the outbreak and the complexity of the pandemic COVID-19 in Southeast Asia and in China, the code of conduct negotiation has fallen into the stagnation.
Có thể nói là tiến trình đàm phán COC hiện nay không có nhiều triển vọng.
We can be safely in saying that the negotiation of COC at this moment of time has come to almost a stall. Almost no progress has been scored over the year.
Dự báo tình hình Biển Đông năm 2021.
As for the South China Sea in 2021,
với các cái tình hình diễn biến của khu vực và thế giới hiện nay, chúng tôi đưa ra một số các cái dự báo tình hình Biển Đông năm 2021 như sau.
Again, the backdrop that we have taken stock, we can see some of the main trends that could be in reality for the year 2021.
Tình hình Biển Đông năm 2021 sẽ tiếp tục diễn biến phức tạp.
First, we see that the complexity is on the rise, continuing from the 2020 to 2021.
Được thể hiện trên các mặt pháp lý, ngoại giao, truyền thông cũng như trên thực địa.
This is going to be seen not only in the diplomatic but also in the legal struggle and even on the site.
Cuộc chiến công hàm năm 2020 sẽ tiếp tục.
It is likely that we are going to see the battle of diplomatic non-verbal continue in the year 2021.
Các nước lớn sẽ tích cực sử dụng các công cụ ngoại giao, kinh tế, tuyên truyền để gây sức ép, lôi kéo, tập hợp lực lượng.
Major powers are also likely to employ the economic, the communications, and also the diplomatic channels, and also means to continue to maximize its interests.
Trên thực địa, Trung Quốc và Mỹ sẽ tiếp tục tăng cường sự hiện diện và tiến hành nhiều hơn các hoạt động quân sự và bán quân sự hướng vào nhau, dù tính chất có thể không phiêu lưu như dưới thời Tổng thống Donald Trump.
On the field, it is possible for a scenario that the US and China are going to conduct the military and paramilitary activities aiming at each other, but maybe we are going to have a less dangerous or risky actions between the two sides.
Với ưu thế đã thiết lập và ngày càng củng cố tại các cơ sở quân sự trên Biển Đông, Trung Quốc sẽ đẩy mạnh các hoạt động kết hợp dân sự và quân sự, tăng cường các hoạt động vùng xám trên thực địa.
As for China, we have to acknowledge that China has a certain advantages well established on the field. And from that premise, China is going to launch more civil and military activities in combinations that would complicate the situation, including employing the gray zone strategy and tactics.
Trung Quốc cũng có thể phản ứng cứng rắn hơn đối với các hoạt động follow-up và các cuộc diễn tập quân sự của Mỹ và đồng minh trên Biển Đông, sẵn sàng ăn miếng trả miếng trước răn đe quân sự của Mỹ.
2021 may also witness China taking a harder line with regard to the follow-ups by the US and the allies. China is going to have a certain activities that has been interpreted as the stronger responses and also reactions from China, like an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
Với Mỹ, trên cơ sở đồng thuận nội bộ và phản ứng tích cực của một số đồng minh, đối tác quan trọng, chính sách Biển Đông của Mỹ dưới thời Biden sẽ không có nhiều thay đổi lớn.
As for US, we have seen the bipartisan consensus and so the support of the domestic audience for the US policies on the South China Sea. So it is reasonable for us to predict that the basic line and the natures of the US strategies on the South China Sea will continue under Biden's administration.
Chính quyền Biden sẽ tập hợp mạnh mẽ đồng minh và tiếp tục phục vụ cái mục tiêu là kiềm chế Trung Quốc.
But one thing is almost for sure, that Biden is going to call in more allies and mobilize more forces in countering China in the South China Sea.
Về triển vọng, đàm phán COC sẽ chưa thể có đột phá, nhất là trong tình hình COVID-19 được dự báo còn diễn biến phức tạp kéo dài.
We are seeing no breakthrough with regard to the COC negotiation, given the fact that pandemic COVID-19 is on and on.
Rủi ro và nguy cơ va chạm đụng độ giữa các lực lượng bán quân sự và quân sự cũng như xu hướng an ninh hóa các hoạt động kinh tế, thương mại, bảo vệ môi trường và nghiên cứu khoa học thông thường đều có chiều hướng gia tăng do các quốc gia đều trở nên nhạy cảm hơn đối với các động thái trên thực địa.
Another trend that we need to pay our attention to, that is the trend of securitizations and the risk of collisions among forces in the field. This securitization could happen to all kinds of activities ranging from economic, technologies, environment protections. This is because countries become more sensitive of other activities at the sea.
Phần thứ ba đó là quan điểm của Việt Nam về vấn đề Biển Đông hiện nay.
With regard to the position of Vietnam on the East Sea issue or South China Sea issues,
quan điểm của Việt Nam về Biển Đông đã được xác định từ nghị quyết Đại hội 12 của Đảng Cộng sản Việt Nam.
So Vietnam is going to continue its consistent policies and also the guidelines, which mostly seen clearly in the resolutions of the 12 Party Congress.
Đó là kiên quyết, kiên trì đấu tranh bảo vệ vững chắc độc lập, chủ quyền, thống nhất và toàn vẹn lãnh thổ của Tổ quốc.
So it says that Vietnam is resolute, determined, and also consistent in defending the national integrity, also the sovereignty and the right to the sovereignties in the South China Sea or the East Sea.
Giữ vững môi trường hòa bình, ổn định để phát triển đất nước, bảo đảm an ninh quốc gia, giữ gìn trật tự, an toàn xã hội.
We are also striving to preserve the peaceful environment for economic development.
Và Việt Nam đã triển khai cụ thể hóa cái nghị quyết trong các cái hoạt động cả trên thực địa và trong ngoại giao.
To ensure the national security, and this line of policy has been fruitfully implemented and strictly followed both in the implementations of the underneath policies as well as in the reality.
Trên thực địa, Việt Nam tiếp tục khẳng định mạnh mẽ và thể hiện ý chí quyết tâm cao nhất trong việc bảo vệ chủ quyền, quyền chủ quyền, quyền tài phán của mình trên các vùng biển và hải đảo của Tổ quốc.
In reality, the world is seeing Vietnam with the highest determination in protecting by the peaceful means and also other means when it's necessary, its national integrity, sovereignty, the right to sovereignty, and also the right to jurisdictions.
Kết hợp chặt chẽ giữa phát triển kinh tế xã hội với đảm bảo quốc phòng an ninh.
We are combining the security with the economic development and progress of the nation.
Phát triển các vùng biển, ven biển, hải đảo.
And we are trying to develop the coastal areas and also the normal activities at sea of our people.
Đẩy mạnh công tác nghiên cứu khoa học công nghệ về quản lý và phát triển kinh tế biển.
Efforts also score in terms of technological and also the blue sea economy.
Khai thác và sử dụng bền vững các cái nguồn tài nguyên, ứng phó hiệu quả với biến đổi khí hậu, nước biển dâng.
Aiming for sustainable development, and especially in coping with the challenges like the climate change or the rising sea levels.
Trên mặt trận ngoại giao, Việt Nam tiếp tục kêu gọi các bên liên quan tuân thủ luật pháp quốc tế, nhất là Công ước Liên Hợp Quốc về luật biển năm 1982.
On the diplomatic front, we are calling all the parties and countries upholding the international laws, including the UNCLOS 1982.
Tuyên bố về cách ứng xử của các bên ở Biển Đông, DOC.
The declarations of conduct of party on the South China Seas or the DOC in 2002.
Tuyên bố nguyên tắc 6 điểm của ASEAN về Biển Đông, hướng tới hoàn thiện bộ khung của Bộ Quy tắc ứng xử Biển Đông với Trung Quốc.
And the statement of the 6-point in principle in implementations of the DOC by the ASEAN. This is for the efforts to conclude the framework for the negotiations of the COC or for the first reading of the COC as well.
Việt Nam cũng luôn tranh thủ sự đồng tình ủng hộ của những nước có lợi ích và tôn trọng luật pháp quốc tế về vấn đề Biển Đông.
We appreciate the efforts by the like-minded countries in joining with Vietnam for protecting the peace, security, and also the international law in the region.
Kêu gọi các bên liên quan, các nước ngoài khu vực cùng xây dựng môi trường hòa bình, đóng góp vào ổn định và hợp tác.
We call for all the stakeholders and also for partners from the regions with the related interests to join us in making these regions a region of peace, stability, and security.
Phát huy hơn nữa vai trò của ASEAN, tăng cường mở rộng hợp tác nội khối và giữa các nước ASEAN với các nước đối tác.
And last but not least, we uphold the central play by ASEAN, calling for the better cooperation in the ASEAN and also between ASEAN and the extra-regional partners.
Xin cảm ơn.
I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for Senior Colonel on Vietnam. It is again very nice to listen to you and interact with you. We had very comprehensive discussions during our last visit when you were officiating as director of IDIR. You see, the whole world and particularly India supports Vietnam's principal position in East Sea. Law is on your side and international opinion is on your side. And I'm certain with more effort and realization and support from the international community, we would be able to moderate behavior of China. As far as Indo-Pacific is concerned, India and Vietnam's positions are totally aligned. Though we have our own ways of dealing with China, we have dealt with them with very firm resolve as the line of actual control. And so have you been dealing with them in the East Sea. And world watches that and world respects that. Now that both the countries are the non-permanent members in the United Nations Security Council and you're also the chair of ASEAN, I think we have better opportunities and scope to align our positions there. But more importantly, our relations, which are under the framework of comprehensive strategic partnership, are beyond China. Today, Vietnam has created a niche for itself in the Indo-Pacific, being an alternate hub, and your economy is on an upswing. You're doing extremely well. And if you look at our comprehensive strategic partnership, it is all encompassing. There are so many dimensions to it. And one of the most critical dimension is our defense cooperation, which is not geared towards China or China. It is basically to strengthen and deepen our bilateral relations. And that would now take us to our next session, and that is having a look at how do we further strengthen our bilateral relations. I'll now hand you over to Dr. Roshan to just take us through the next session.
Thank you, General Sharma. In the second session, we have Vice Admiral Satish Soni, PVSM, AVSM, NM retired. He was the Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Eastern Naval Command and Southern Naval Command. He was also the Deputy Chief of Naval Staff. Currently, he is a Distinguished Fellow at the USI. He has written articles on Indo-Pacific and participates in seminars. We also have with us Ambassador Ton Sin Than, retired. Previously, he was the Ambassador of Vietnam to India and Sri Lanka. His area of expertise includes competition and cooperation in Asia, ASEAN issues, Vietnam-India relations, etc. His publications include Essentials of Diplomatic Negotiations, Regional Cooperation in Asia, the Role of ASEAN and India, and so forth. May I now request Major General Trong, Director IDIR, Vietnam, to chair the second session, please.
Thank you. So thank you, General Sharma, for the moderating the section 1. To continue, we move to section 2. So in this section, we will listen to two presentations on Vietnam-India relationship, which takes stock and assess a current state, pointing out issues and while proposing measures to advance the tie to more elevated height of strategy. I would like to introduce the two speakers in this section. They are Vice Admiral Satish Soni from USI and His Excellency Mr. Ton Sinh Thành, former Vietnam's ambassador to India. With no doubt, our speakers are veteran experts on this field. Let's come to the presentation of the Vice Admiral Satish Soni first, and then the presentation of the Ambassador Ton Sinh Thành. Now, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ambassador Pham San Chao, His Excellency Ambassador Pranoy Verma, Directors of IDIR and USI, veteran fellow officers and members of both the think tanks. Whilst I shall briefly cover economic and other aspects of our relationship, the focus will be on our defense relationship, especially the Navy, which has taken center stage in recent time. The traditionally close and cordial relations have their historical roots in the common struggle for liberation from foreign rule and the national struggle for independence. Full diplomatic relations were established in January 1972, and relations between the two countries were elevated to the level of strategic partnership during your Prime Minister's visit in 2007. In 2016, during our Prime Minister's visit to Vietnam, the relationship was raised from a strategic partnership to comprehensive strategic partnership. There have been a number of high-level visits, that of the PM and the President, the latest one being the virtual summit of our Prime Ministers on 21st December 2020. There have been virtual meetings between our defense and foreign ministers in COVID times. We have a number of institutionalized mechanisms for bilateral exchanges. The Joint Commission meeting at the foreign ministers level and the Foreign Office consultations and the strategic dialogue at the secretary level provide the larger framework for bilateral cooperation in various areas. There is an annual security dialogue at the Defense Secretary level, wherein proposals for defense cooperation are discussed annually. The Joint Committee on Science and Technology meets at regular intervals. The India-Vietnam Joint Working Group on Educational Exchange was set up in 2012. India-Vietnam Joint Subcommission on Trade was set up in 2013 and meets regularly. The first meeting of the Joint Maritime Liaison Committee was held in April 2016 on the sidelines of the Maritime India Summit in Mumbai. The first Maritime Security Dialogue was held in March 2019. India's relationship with Vietnam are marked by growing economic and commercial engagement. India is now amongst the top 10 trading partners of Vietnam. Economic and commercial cooperation has been identified as a strategic thrust area in the India-Vietnam Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which was announced during the Prime Minister's visit. Various mechanisms have been established to facilitate the trade between our two countries, which include the Joint Subcommission on Trade and establishment of joint working groups in various sectors. Garments and textile, pharmaceuticals, agro-commodities, leather and footwear, engineering and renewable energy have been identified as priority areas for cooperation. Bilateral trade, according to Indian data, during 2020 was 10 billion, with imports and exports from India pegged at 4.45 and 5.55 billion respectively. Vietnam is the fourth largest trading partner of India amongst the ASEAN countries, and India is now amongst the top 10 trading partners of Vietnam. India's investments in Vietnam are around 1.9 billion, but are expected to increase in the coming years. Major sectors of investments are energy, mineral exploration, agro-processing, sugar manufacturing, agrochemicals, IT, and auto components. Since 1976, India has extended over 19 lines of credit totaling more than 364 million US dollars to Vietnam. The 18th LOC worth 100 for defense procurement was signed during the president's visit in 2014. Under this, after a bidding process, Larsen and Toubro have been selected by the Vietnamese government to build 12 high-speed patrol boats. The first of these boats has been delivered in early 2021. Vietnam has been a large recipient of training programs under the ITEC scheme. Presently, over 130 ITEC slots are being offered to Vietnam. Overall, approximately 200 training slots are allotted to Vietnam, which include scholarships under the General Cultural Scholarship Scheme, Buddhist and Sanskrit Studies Scholarship, and under the Educational Exchange Program. India has also been providing assistance to Vietnam within the ASEAN framework under the Mekong Ganga Cooperation Scheme. India has taken up two quick impact projects, of which 13 have been implemented. There is a congruence in our strategic concerns, as can be seen by our respective visions on the Indo-Pacific. This has been very eloquently brought out by Ambassador Verma. India remains committed to the modernization of Vietnam armed forces, which are predominantly equipped with equipment of Russian origin, in which Indian armed forces have considerable experience. The strategic locations of our two countries afford possibilities for effective monitoring of very busy and important sea lines of communication, as also for providing early warning of movements of units which may have a hostile intent. We have no conflict of strategic and security interests with each other, but have historical differences with China on account of demarcation of borders on land and at sea. We have a convergence of views with regard to a need to invest in multifaceted defense cooperation initiatives over a long term. A joint working group on defense cooperation was constituted in 2013, and meetings are held on the sidelines of the security dialogue. Defense relationships between the two countries date back to 1954, when India was appointed as the chairman of the commission which implemented the ceasefire agreement between Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and France. According to official history of Indian participation in UN peacekeeping operations, India provided one infantry battalion and supporting staff till 1970. The most important milestone of our defense cooperation has been signing of the MOU by the two defense ministers in November 2009, which encompasses information exchange, exchange of visits by personnel and ships, cooperation in defense industry, defense science technology and research. We are currently offering 70 ITEC slots every year to Vietnamese defense personnel. Naval cooperation encompasses a wide array of actions aimed at capacity building and capability enhancement, including supply of spares, repair of ships, deputation of instructors, a regular exchange of goodwill visits by naval ships, etc. Some of the specifics I will bring out. The staff talks between our naval staffs have been held regularly. Major issues under discussion include the composite training program, bilateral naval exercises, VPNs, participation in the Admiral's Cup Regatta, medical cooperation, submarine cooperation, special forces interaction, English language comprehension cooperation, hydrographic cooperation, cadets exchange program, training on water survival training facility at Kochi, setting up a float support team, exchange of delegations, education training, repair of equipment, provision, etc. The technical agreement on exchange of white shipping information was signed between the two countries in September 2016, and information exchange was operationalized in April 2017. Indian ships regularly make friendly port calls to Vietnam. The latest was INS Kiltan, which supplied relief material to flood-affected areas in Vietnam in 2020. Vietnam has been availing hydrographic courses in India, and an exchange of electronic navigation charts has been discussed. A MOU on hydrography was concluded in November 2020. Since 2002, Vietnam has been availing courses in iron training establishments on a regular basis. The training is being conducted under the ITEC-1 program and the composite training package. Under the ITEC scheme, Vietnam has been availing 10 to 20 billets in various courses annually. Over 500 Vietnamese naval personnel have been trained by the Indian Navy so far under the composite training plan in areas of submarine, aviation, dockyard, and miscellaneous subjects. The Indian Navy has also been providing consultancy for setting up submarine and aviation arms, as also for commissioning of maintenance facilities. Other areas of training assistance include availing of NDC, DSSC, NDA, CDM, language courses, flying from deck, meteorology, and oceanography. During the visit of VPN chief in 2011, a composite assistance package for VPN personnel was discussed in two parts. One was the supply of platforms. In addition to the coastal patrol boats that I have already spoken about, the PM has announced a further 500 million USD line of credit for defense purchases, which may include batteries for kilo-class submarines, upgradation of ships, spares for aircraft, building of 12 more patrol boats, and procurement of high-quality steel for defense industry. The Indian Navy has also gifted spares for ships of Soviet origin. A technical training team first visited in Vietnam in 2007 for defect rectification and equipment of VPN ships. And in 2014, an iron maintenance team of 18 personnel undertook repairs once again on board the VPN ships in Vietnam. The second team, comprising 20 dockyard personnel, was deputed in December 15. Presently, a more elaborate and a permanent arrangement for positioning of repair of commercial bases is being progressed. Discussions for setting up a C4I system with a command center at Haiphong and 5 to 7 regional centers in various naval zones has been under discussion with Messrs. Bell. However, it is learned that VPN has entered into an agreement with Thales Group and Phase 1 is already under implementation. India would be keen to provide necessary assistance for setting up the Phase 2 of the project. VPN personnel participate in Sea Rider Initiative, Admiral's Cup Cadet Exchange Program, and visit by the Higher Command Study Course. Since 2006, delegations from Vietnam had been participating in the biennial congregation Milan held in Port Blair. For the first time, a Vietnamese ship participated in the International Fleet Review in Visakhapatnam in 2016. We look forward to VPN's Navy's participation in Milan 2021, which is likely to be scheduled in Vizag. This has not been officially announced as yet, but I am certain that you will get an invitation. What is the way ahead? Both our countries have the potential to play a role in our respective regions with an ample scope for cooperation and in the emerging maritime landscape of the Indo-Pacific. Specific areas which merit a closer watch are collaboration or export on building state-of-the-art hardware instead of the low-end military equipment that we have been interacting with so far, against the existing lines of credit. Akash surface-to-air systems, Dhruv, ALH helicopters, BrahMos missiles are some of the initiatives which could be pursued. A number of maritime cooperation initiatives have been identified. India would like to be of greater help. And personally, it's a very personal view, I find that at times Vietnam holds back. We need to pursue cooperation on blue economy initiatives. Maritime domain awareness is the most important area in which we can cooperate. Indian participation in the Coastal Radar project and AIS station could be a starter. Appointment of a senior naval advisor to the VPN. You would have our naval expertise permanently in your headquarters. There is a scope for exchange of intelligence between our two navies. We could cooperate on technology and research and development. India has over 40 DRDO labs with considerable experience. There is a scope for cooperation in asymmetric warfare, employable naval power, cyber and space warfare. One of the speakers had mentioned about cooperation in tackling non-traditional challenge at sea. I couldn't agree with you more. I will conclude. Thank you very much.
Now, I would like to invite Ambassador Thompson to present his second presentation, please.
Major General B.K. Sakma, Director General of USI, and Major General Vu Tien Chok, Director General of the Vietnam Institute for Defense International Relations, Excellency Pranay Vekma, and Excellency Pham Sing Cho, ladies and gentlemen. I have many times talked about Vietnam-India relation, especially when I was ambassador to India. But today I am also very happy to talk about this relation in the capacity as not as ambassador but a researcher, independent researcher. And first of all, I would like to share the views of Admiral Sakti Soni on the Vietnam-India relation, which cover almost everything about India-Vietnam relations. But my first observation about the India-Vietnam relation is that despite the rampant COVID-19 pandemic and the unpredictable international situation, which have caused a lot of difficulties in the international relation, but this could not prevent Vietnam-India relation from strengthening and further developing in all fields, in the politics, diplomacy, economics, trade, investment, culture, energy, and defense to realize our comprehensive strategic partnership. Especially on the political and diplomatic front, which is a foundation of the overall partnership between our two countries. In the context of pandemic, the two countries did not waive any activities, but continue to change face-to-face contacts to digital contacts at all levels, including highest level. To mention a few, we can see the Joint Commission meeting, the 7th section, was held on August 25th last year, as usual, and also digital meeting between our two prime ministers was held like official visit, which when the two sides can have a joint vision statement. The first statement like this between the two countries, and also 7 documents was also signed during the visit, during the meeting. Yeah. And in the economic front, I think in the pandemic, a lot of difficulties, but trade volume still can keep at 10 billion US dollars, which is below our expectation, our target, but I think it's good enough in the difficult situation. And India still maintain investment in Vietnam, especially in oil and gas, which has a lot of strategic meaning here. And especially India increased the number of development projects in Vietnam, and the implementation of small-scale, quick impact projects. Today, I know that there are already 26 projects like that in 22 provinces, and among them 12 have been completed. And the two sides also continue to cooperation in science technology, focusing on 5G technology, satellite, atomic energy, and space technology, and remote sensing. One example is the continuation of the construction of the Remote Sensing Cooperation Center in Bình Dương province. And the people-to-people exchange and cultural cooperation is also regularly promoted as usual in the areas of yoga, film industry, and education also. And new development on this sector, like India is working with our education ministry to include the contents of India in high school textbook of Vietnam, so that the Vietnamese student can understand more about India, especially in the defense cooperation, which is the major pillar of Vietnam-India relation. The two sides regularly maintain the digital contacts. We noticed that early this year, the 30th National Defense Policy Dialogue was organized digitally. And on this occasion, the The Center for Information Technology and Foreign Language, with the support from India, was inaugurated in Nha Trang University of Information and Communication. And late December last year, the Indian naval ships visited Vietnam as usual. And defense industry cooperation also has witnessed new developments, especially the implementation of the credit packages, especially the construction of the patrol boats using the $100 million credit line from India. And India also now continue to support Vietnam in training the officers in Navy and also Air Force. And India also is helping Vietnam in peacekeeping activities. So we are satisfied with the relation, the development of the relation. But now, Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, our region, Indo-Pacific, is fast changing in a very complicated manner and creating many problems, many challenges to both countries, including not only the traditional security challenges, such as the worsening balance of power in the region and the territorial violation in South China Sea, and as well as in the China-India border areas, but also challenges on non-traditional matters such as cyber attacks, water resource hindrance, and especially the spread of pandemic now we are seeing. So against this backdrop, what should we do? What we need to do? I think Vietnam and India should, in my opinion, should close rank and further strengthen our partnership in a more comprehensive and substantive manner. We should accelerate the implementation of the Vietnam-India Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Vietnam and India should intensify exchange of delegations at all levels, especially the high level, when the condition permit. But if it does not permit, then we can continue to contact digitally. And it should, I think this should be aimed at strengthen our understanding. We should strengthen understanding and consolidate our strategic political trust. So it can be the foundation for the overall relation between our two countries. Then Vietnam, India should continue to have a regular coordination in international arena, in the ASEAN India framework, and also the in United Nations, when Vietnam and India are non-permanent permanent member of Security Council, and we should increase consultation on many matters directly or indirectly related to our interest. And especially based on the strong economic trust, we should I think enhance our economic cooperation, which is the top priority of the two countries, and the two countries should about to double our volume of trade, which is now at 10-12 billion. But I said many some years ago that we can even have 20 billions. Yeah. We should also make efforts in increased investment. We should make favorable conditions for investors from India, and we also welcome Vietnamese investor to India also, because both countries have their strengths, so we can exploit. And Vietnam and India should also further promote defense cooperation, which is good now, but we should increase our efforts to realize on the programs, the agreements that have signed, right? Like the 500 million credit line, which is available already since 2016. It will be very useful for Vietnam in having more equipments from India, right? So we also need to increase cooperation in training, defense training, and also the defense industry, including the research and development, and of course production and maintenance of weapons, and defense technology transfer. So we can use the credit line for all this purpose. We also expect substantive increase of joint activities of all three branches of armed forces, like Army, Navy, Air Force, and we should welcome more regularly ship visits from India, and joint exercise, training, information sharing, and also cooperation in UN peacekeeping activities. And finally, I think it's also necessary to maintain cooperation in education, culture, and people-to-people exchange, including the new initiative of drafting encyclopedia of India-Vietnam relation. And finally, I think we also should pay more attention to each other's interest, mutual interest. We should renew our way of cooperation. So I expect that we should pay more attention to the interests and requirements of each other, and it should be two-way of cooperation. Vietnam should pay more attention to to the need of India also. So to what India is facing, what challenges is facing, and also India may pay more attention about what Vietnam require now. For example, economic funds. Vietnam now in the chain of supply chain. So we need to diversify the market. We need India for diversifying our market. So I think we should also have to change a little about the way we cooperate with each other. So in conclusion, I believe that with the efforts and determination of the two countries, the people, government, and especially the armed forces of the two countries, the strategic partnership between Vietnam and India, which have gained strong momentum, will be raised to a new height in the year to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker, for your enlightening presentation on Vietnam and India relation with specific proposal to promote the relationship between two countries in the future. So it cannot be denied that Vietnam and India have had a good traditional relationship sustained by testified and mature political trust. India has been proving to be one of the most important partners of Vietnam, as the two countries are closely and effectively cooperating in many areas, ranging from politics, foreign policy, economy and trade, defense and security, and people-to-people exchanges, which strengthens in investment, resources, military and defense industry capacity. India and always a friend in need to assist Vietnam on this road to economic development and defending the nation. There are important foundations for Vietnam and India to continue to promote the comprehensive strategic partnership in elevate Vietnam-India relationship to the new high. So now let's listen to the audience for the comment and question. I think that's following high quality presentation above. This Q&A section should further focus on issues and measures to promote Vietnam-India comprehensive strategic partnership.
So for this part, I would suggest that we hand over to Dr. Rosha and also to Major General B.K. Sharma for your conducting, and also for General Sharma to chair this. But I would suggest that please highlight and also spare the good time for Vietnamese side to place the question and respond to all the questions concern the presenters and also the commentators on our side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions like middle power, how India, France, Australia and Vietnam can avoid getting embroiled in great power rivalry. There is another on water issues, the water problem which Southeast Asia is facing, and how what measures can be taken to get China into the negotiation table. There are a couple of more questions which I would like our director, General Sharma, to please ask and comment on those.
Thank you, Dr. Roshan. broadly, I would request the participants, particularly Admiral Soni, to give his response because he has a very pressing commitment. The first question that emerges is that can India and Vietnam join hands together with other middle level powers and have their own position on Indo-Pacific without getting unduly embroiled in the great power rivalry? This is one question. The second question that is about what exactly are Vietnam's expectations in relation to defense cooperation from India? Because we've been talking about supply of some high-end equipment like BrahMos and Akash, but from my interaction in Vietnam, probably their aspirations and their expectations from India are much more. So what are those expectations? Another issue that has come up is that there are many other countries keeping in view the importance of Cameron Bay. They're trying to sort of gain a toehold. So what would be Vietnam's position to that? And one more question that is about what is Vietnam's position on Quad being transformed or morphed into another NATO? So I would request Admiral Soni to give his response and then request other panelists to comment upon this. Over to you, Admiral Soni, if you wish to say something.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it is under the Chatham House rules, and I would like to be very frank about our cooperation. Hopefully, we should feed up to the government channels. After all, it's a 1.5 track dialogue. Now, Indian Navy and the Vietnamese Navy have enormous scope for cooperation. It is extremely important that we cooperate. Now, in 2011, when the Vietnamese naval chiefs visited, normally such visits, the CNS and of the both navies, they interact for about 15-20 minutes, have a cup of coffee, and then there is a schedule which the visiting chief follows. But in case of the Vietnamese naval chief, uh, this discussion lasted for one full day. One full day. I am not exaggerating. And finally, after having a cup of tea, the Vietnamese naval chief and the delegation, comprising just 2-3 people, naval officers, we sat in the conference room, and about 50 naval officers from the naval headquarters were asked to attend. And whatever the Vietnamese naval chief said was minuted, and a plan of action to pursue what we call the composite training package was made. I have not seen this kind of diligence anywhere with regard to our cooperation. Whatever was asked for, whether it meant, training of pilots, whether it meant maintaining of Commonwealth helicopters or sending a team or anything and everything was maintained, and a big plan was made, and which is, to some extent has been followed. But I will also be very frank in saying that we feel that Vietnam picks and chooses, low-end cooperation initiatives, and they are hesitant into going in for big deals, whether it is BrahMos or it is ALH or it is Akash. Well, on the face of it, there is an interest, but when it comes to a commitment, whether it is coastal radar stations, etc., there is Vietnam Navy, I think, pulls back. Probably on account of the sensitivities that you might have with your relationship, with China. I'm not too sure whether it is that or something else. But certainly there is a lot of scope for cooperation. and Indian Navy will never hold back. Whatever you ask for, whatever you put on the table will be accepted. As you know, we hold Vietnam in very high esteem, and your cooperation is the most important for us, for the Indian Navy. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Just the other panelists, and particularly if the two ambassadors would like to express their views on the subject.
Well, I think on this issue about expanding the horizons of our cooperation, if you look at where we were 5 years ago, specifically talking of defense cooperation and where we are today, I think there are many positives to draw from, especially the defense industry cooperation. We are working through the two defense lines, $600 million credit line. I think it has provided us a robust platform to engage for future as well, not just confining ourselves to these two credit lines. And this is reflected in the fact that during the virtual summit, we also agreed on a framework arrangement for carrying forward our defense industry cooperation, which goes beyond these two credit lines. So clearly there is an interest in continuing this. There could be lessons drawn from how we have executed these two defense lines of credit to make this cooperation even more streamlined and more efficient. And one of the ways I could envisage, again, very personally, is that we look at specific projects and then look at funding them through credit lines rather than the other way around, which then expedites processes, etc. I mean, these are again matters of detail, but the point that I'm trying to drive home is that the experience of the two defense credit lines have actually spurred significant interest on both sides to carry forward this cooperation. I think this is an important area for us. It not only serves our defense cooperation needs, but also if you look at it more granularly, it actually augments Vietnam's maritime defense capabilities, which is what we are talking about with much of these discussions here, and thereby, also serving India's interests in the region. So I think defense is actually, I would rate as a success story of our engagement over the last. I mean, you can't put a time frame, but I would say in the last 5 years to 10 years, there have been significant scaling up of the way we are engaging. And Admiral Soni mentioned about how it has come about in terms of the closeness of and unity of purpose that we both share, our two armed forces. How the decisions are taken about what is to be done and what is not to be done, of course, I mean, there will be choices exercised by both sides. But we hope that in the spirit of candor, frankness, and also the fact that we have shown sensitivity and regard to each other's needs and interests, we will continue to find areas of cooperation which are realizable, realistic, and also implementable in a frame of time that we both agree on. I think I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Excellency. And Ambassador Fong Sancho, would you like to comment on this? Hello.
His Excellency, you need to unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now.
Right. As the ambassador of Vietnam to India over the past 2 years, I see 3 breakthroughs. I just want to share with you all these 3 breakthroughs and how we should move forward. The first breakthrough, I think it's in terms of defense cooperation. We are finally got clearance for the 100 credit line LOC, and we are about to get the clearance for the 500 LOC, which is still pending. And we got also a sort of upgrade of upgradations in terms of the trust and confidence by Vietnamese consumers in pharmaceutical product produced by India, which is very important because when it comes to pharmaceutical, the confidence by the consumer of the people play a very important role, and it does matter much. And we have been able to shift to upgrade the confidence by Vietnamese consumers in Indian pharmaceutical. So what I would like to say that perhaps no other ambassadors in the world being able to enjoy such cordial relationship between the ambassador of Vietnam currently in India and the three head of the three armed forces of India. And we appreciate tremendously their readiness to help Vietnam, especially and most recently the sending of a ship to Vietnam by the Admiral of the Indian Navy, and the readiness to train more pilots. I think that reflects a very high level of strategic trust and between the two countries. So when it comes to sensitive matters, India is there to help Vietnam. So I believe this is a huge breakthrough in area of defense in order to subordinate what has been said earlier. The second area is in the area of political contact, not only reflected in by the intensity of mutual visit, but by the close cooperations between the two permanent representatives of our two countries in New York when it comes to matters of great interest for our both countries, especially for India when it comes to the appropriations of A370, and Vietnam is there to support India when India comes and asks Vietnam for the support in the first days after the appropriation. I think this is also reflect how ready Vietnam is to accompany India in this process in New York, and now we have India also joining Vietnam with our two overlapping terms in close cooperations in that matter. And we are looking forward to the month of August when India will chair the UN Security Council, and we work closely together in order to have as our Indian friend call a signature achievement during Indian tenure at the UN Security Council. So it means that we have a deepened cooperation and coordinations at the multilateral field. The third area, which is a little bit more practical and a little bit small, but I think it's assumed great importance. All the remaining issues between Vietnam and India have been addressed. The first good news is that yesterday we got an extra land of 300 square meters adjacent to our embassy on the basis of reciprocity, and this is a huge effort made by the Indian government to provide that land to our embassy. So we are able now to build a new embassy with a bigger land. And in order to, on the basis of reciprocity, because we also provide the same amount of land to India. And the second breakthrough, I think, in terms of the small thing, is that the two sides have clearance for the installations of the bust of President Ho Chi Minh in New Delhi. It's a beautiful park in the middle of Chanakya Park, and we also give the Thao Dan Park, which is a very prime park in the middle of the heart of Ho Chi Minh City, in order for the installation of the bust of Mahatma Gandhi. I think with these two, we will announce that soon, and that will be a great step forward for the people-to-people contact. And the third breakthrough, I believe that we are going to have soon the first ever honorary consul of Vietnam in Bangalore, we try a number of locations, but finally some are still not yet there. We have not been able to make it possible, but we are going to have soon a new and the first ever honorary consul of Vietnam to one of the big city in India. So having said that, I mean that we have made a stride forward in defense, in political coordination, consultations, and also in small things like land for the embassy, honor people, bus for our leaders. So I also want to, with that example, I want to solidify what has been said earlier by Ambassador Tun Sing Tang, that in spite of the rampant devastations by COVID-19, our relations continue to strengthen. And especially with the continued flight operated by Indo carry Indian experts and investors into Vietnam. And now, what we need to do? I think that now we need to strengthen trade and investment. At the moment, we are pleased to see the first entry into Vietnamese market by the huge technological company CL. CL made its first entry into Vietnam, and we are looking forward to another breakthrough by the petrol and gas company ASEAN with its commercial exploration of gas offshore Da Nang. We are looking forward to that. And on the other side, we would like to see a huge investment by FPT in Hyderabad. They have already released the property, the office. They also put in place. They put in place the team for huge investment also in technology and communications in Hyderabad. So I hope that the two countries will be able to make a decisive and massive stride in terms of investments and commercial trade. With that, we will deepen economically our bilateral relations, which has been already good in various fields. Thank you.
And I'll request first General Bhaduria to make his comments. General Bhaduria.
Right, sir. Now, first thing I want to draw everyone's attention is that by now we are very sure that China's rise will be anything but peaceful. That is very clear. During pandemic, they took actions which have cleared everybody's mind that if we are wishing for China to rise peacefully, or as they were themselves saying that we will rise peacefully, that particular hypothesis needs to be set aside, right? However, there is a contradiction. We need peace in the area for prosperity for all the countries. India is a rising power, but it needs its economy to grow, and we have a target of 5 trillion economy to be growing by to be there by about 2025, right? So we need peaceful atmosphere. Now these two contradictions need to be reconciled, right? Now this thing that we by ourselves, like middle powers coming together, I do not think that will suffice, because if you see the locations, the geography of the area, Australia, Japan are more towards East China Sea, South China Sea and Pacific. India is focused, or its power lies more in the Indian Ocean region. So let us be doing some kind of a burden sharing, what Americans are saying. As also, America is a #1 military power, right? Its budget is more than next 5-6 countries put together. So we should not keep US out of this whole system that we are trying to develop, right? China respects power. If this kind of a message goes to them that look, here are the countries, right? Whatever you call them, ganging up, aligning together, whatever, the message must go to China that in case they violate certain international rules, they violate peace, it will be contested. So far, probably China may have been thinking it will not be contested. What we saw in Ladakh, right? India stood up, not only stood up, it also retaliated in a manner that it hurt China. It retaliated on the border, it retaliated in the economic field, it retaliated elsewhere, right? The message was sent. And what do we have? We have little more peace than what we had a few months back. So that is what I want to say. And expansion of Quad, well, like what our Ambassador Verma said, that the metrics of security issues have changed or expanded during this pandemic. So what we can add is the security in health. We could all come together for the vaccine, for the health security of our people. Terrorism, that is something which personally, because USI was involved in this Quad exercise, I think that's something very important. Next year, or probably this year, we are going to have a very huge event in Japan, Olympics, right? And we know that some of the ASEAN countries are suffering from this menace of terrorism. So why can't we all come together as Quad or as whatever we wish to say, right? So like this, we can expand our cooperation, starting with terrorism, security in health, and also the supply chain resilience initiative, which India, Japan, Australia have this thing. That is in the to the benefit of everyone here. Right? We cannot just be relying on a particular supply chain and be taken hostage to that. Right? So we need to diversify. There's an initiative which has started. I think all others, particularly ASEAN, must join. So those are my comments on the question that was posed from the other side. Thank you.
I just briefly want to add to what General Baduria said. Firstly, I think there is a need for ASEAN to develop a consensus on China's belligerent behavior in South China Sea and EC. They are picking up country by country. Sometimes it is Philippines, sometimes it's Malaysia, then it is Vietnam, and they're trying to intimidate. Therefore, if ASEAN starts speaking with one voice, and that is not to condemn China, but to have this code of conduct or declaration of parties, which is not driven by China, but which is as per ASEAN's security needs, I think that would the biggest sobering effect on China. Because for the moment, they've been able to divide ASEAN and drive some kind of a wedge within ASEAN. The next issue that I feel is unless the four countries of the Quad have something very, very concrete on the table to tell or to show to other countries will not be very excited to join Quad because they do not want to sort of get sandwiched between the two blocks. They have to balance their relations between China and United States of America. But if Quad becomes more comprehensive, there is a strong economic dimension, infrastructure dimension, security dimension, particularly in the arena of non-traditional security threat, technological cooperation, then there may be enough incentive for other regional countries to join Quad. But if it becomes essentially a security bloc, I don't think countries would take that risk. In regard to the imbalance in India's trade with Vietnam, which is about $12 billion with a sort of a wish to expand it to $20 billion vis-a-vis China's trade. Well, the quality of relationship is not entirely depend on what kind of trade you have. And the examples are the trade that China has with United States of America, the trade that China has with Japan, even with ASEAN. They're the largest trading partners of all these countries. Yet their relationship is not very, very harmonious. Here in India, we understand certain geopolitical realities that China is your next door neighbor. You have a close proximity and you have a huge volume of trade. But that notwithstanding, whenever China pushes the envelope in EC, there is a very strong anti-China sentiment within your country. India is not trying to compete with China on dollar-to-dollar basis, but yes, there is so much more that we need to do to enhance our trade. And as it is, our maritime connectivity with the Vietnam is very good. With the construction of trilateral highway through India, Myanmar, and then Thailand, Once we get another land bridge to connectivity to Vietnam, the volume of our trade will further improve. What is very, very inspiring here is that we've listened to our two ambassadors and one former ambassador of Vietnam to India who spent very long years here. I think it gives us a lot of hope and optimism that our relationship is on an excellent trajectory and we must maintain the momentum. And whatever little problems are there in our relationship, which are more in terms of procedures and different work cultures, if we can align them, probably we can give a better boost to our relationship without worrying too much about China. That is all I have to say. What next, Dr. Roshan?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, for this favor. I am Colonel Lê Phương, the Deputy Director of IDIR, and I have two questions for General Bahaduria. In terms of your remark on India perspective on India, Indo-Pacific and the region. So the first question is, in India's perspective, which are the challenges ASEAN country are facing right now, and what do you think is the real, in fact, role of ASEAN organization during the time the major powers like the US and China to carry their strategies in the region? My first question is. And the second question is, do you think in India's perspective, under the Joe Biden's administration in US, so how will India cooperate and coordinate with US future in terms of the carry on the Indo and Pacific strategies? Thank you very much.
General Bhaduria, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. If I have understood your questions correctly, what I'll do is I'll answer the second question first because that is the easier one. India-US defense cooperation is at its peak, right? From here on, we can only go up and not down, right? And this has been conveyed by the Biden administration just about a day or two back. So this relationship is going to only become stronger and stronger, right? We have signed some of the very path-breaking, as far as we are concerned, agreements with US for carrying out defense cooperation in the entire region of Indo-Pacific. So that should set the record straight about what's going to happen in future, right? We are coordinating, we are with US in carrying out the FONOPs. We send our ships, like what Admiral Soni was also mentioning. We are sending regular ships there. And in Indian Ocean region, of course, we are cooperating and we had the geographical advantage. Now, as far as ASEAN is concerned, I understand the difficulties of the countries in ASEAN because they have a huge, what should I say, the tie-up with China as far as economy is concerned, right? And they have their economies are interlinked. It's not so easy to break that, right? And also, and you work on a consensus. ASEAN works on consensus. So it's not always easy to achieve consensus, right? So you will find one odd player not falling in, not agreeing to whatever others want. And this is that we from outside witnesses quite regularly. Like, for example, there are countries which are very close to China as far as their borders are concerned. They would like to be different. What's happening is Myanmar is an excellent example. So therefore, personally, I feel ASEAN needs to and all these countries, Quad countries, are saying that ASEAN is central to the security. right? So that cooperation between the outside powers, call them US, Japan, India, and ASEAN must become even more stronger and expand to some other fields. Intelligence sharing, like I said, cooperation in non-traditional security, what our director was saying. So that must kick in and start taking root and shapes. Thank you.
Thank you, General Baturia. We had a very frank and candid discussions, and I would like to thank all the panelists as well as both the ambassadors giving an insight to such important issues. I would like to conclude the session, and may I now request Major General Trong, Director IDIR, to give his concluding remarks, please.
Thank you. General Sharma, Director of USI, distinguished Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen from Vietnam and India. We have had a fruitful webinar today with an insightful and candid discussion of high-level issue. The presentation by our speaker have captured well and prominent dynamic in our Indo-Pacific region, providing an insight into Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, IPOI. Since it was the first introduced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi at East Asia Summit in Bangkok, the 4th November 2019. It is clear that IPOI share many commonality with ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. AOIP as far as ensuring a free, open, inclusive, and international rule-based Indo-Pacific. India's IPOI places emphasis on multilateral cooperation in 7 areas, namely maritime security, maritime ecology, maritime resources, capacity building and resources sharing, disaster risk reduction and management, science, technology, and academic cooperation, and last but not least, trade. Connectivity and maritime transport. In 2021, Vietnam and India are both non-permanent members of UN Security Council. We are hope that with our contribution and effort, the regional security will evolve positively, thus securing and sustaining peace and prosperity. Thorny issues in the region will be settled peacefully to help bring about the stable security environment for all countries to cooperate and develop. Today, webinar we have also taken stock of Vietnam and India comprehensive strategic partnership in a view to mapping out practical cooperation measures, including those to push bilateral defense cooperation. As we are entering 5th year of our comprehensive strategic partnership in 2021, moving forward with achievements so far, we have very reason to expect to our bilateral relationship to make a big leap in the future, and cooperation can expand and flourish, in which defense cooperation will further deepen and be made proportional in the weight and comprehensive strategic partnership. For the two institutes, I hope that IDIR and US cooperation will continue to be consolidated and strengthened with seminars like this to be regularly held. I think once 3 months. We can do that. Yeah. So not only the leader level, but also at expert level, and thus researcher of the two institutes, as well as associate researcher, have a more platform for their discussion and exchange our view on situation in the world, region, and the relationship between the two countries. Also, this is to help promoting and finding ways ensure a practical and effective cooperation between the two Ministers of Defense. Thank you for your participation. General Sharma, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Major General Trong. May I now request Major General Sharma, Director USI, to please give his concluding remarks.
Thank you very much for your concluding remarks and for proposing that we need to do these interactions more frequently. I'm extremely thankful to our two ambassadors to spare their valuable time and to support the two institutions in our initiative. And we look forward to your continued support, because without your support and intervention, there is a chance of the two think tanks actually losing focus. So we would look forward to more encouragement and more participation from our two embassies. And in this regard, what I need to propose is that firstly, today's proceeding we are going to convert into a monograph, and I may request Director IDIR to, if they want to expand on the papers which they have already written, they may do it and send us those papers, and we'll make a combined monograph which will have the monogram of the insignia of your institution and our institution, and have it as a common publication. Second, we totally endorse your view that we need to have maybe once in a quarter such interaction on contemporary and thematic issues. And thirdly, towards the end of this year, we will have a physical international seminar on Indo-Pacific, and we, as in the past, will request your delegation to come both for bilateral as well as participation in that international seminar. One more request I have for our Vietnamese ambassador here. In the past, Dr. Thompson had called us to his embassy. Three of us had participated in very comprehensive interaction. He had invited ambassadors from other ASEAN countries, and we had some wonderful discussions. And subsequently, we were thankful to His Excellency Pham San Chow that he came to USI together with his colleagues from other ASEAN countries, and we had an indoor discussion on situation in East China, East Sea. I think these kind of deliberations should continue, and we at the USI would be more than willing to come over to your embassy or request you to come, and so that we have more and more such interactions, and we take this dialogue process further and improve our understanding of the geopolitical dynamics and align the positions of the two countries for better boost our bilateral relations. So with these words, I thank you once again. We really enjoyed this interaction, and we look forward to many more such interactions in the future. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, and God bless.